Mr. Bradon Roberts representing TTUTA. Good morning.
Good morning to the Channel 5 Rise and Shine family.
Mr. Roberts, you are at the helm of the Tobago region?
Tobago officer.
Tobago officer. Okay, so school is reopening an extra week. So let's just start with how the Tobago schools, I mean, you may not be able to provide the exact figure, but in terms of just based on your information, how prepared are the schools for reopening of school?
Well, I like that you preface it by saying, based on my information, the division would have promised that they would have submitted to tutor the projects that they would be working on so that we can have an idea what is to be done. So we used to do a long time ago. Monitor some of the projects, the feedback, and so on. That promise never materialized. We never received anything from the division. I know that site books to be done, the secretary and her team will be going out. It was indicated that I may be invited to join that team. However, we have already scheduled to check our schools that next week, Thursday and Friday, when teachers are back out, so we could get the live feedback and see what really impacts them when we get out. The concern is, I'm not certain how they really have funds to space this time around, but some of the projects still to meet. We have quite a few projects that we have to continue on weekends because they will not be able to finish in time. We don't have a full grasp of the schools that are actually getting works. There are some principals who indicated that they have started works, but we do not have that level of communication from the division with the actual rollout of the repair program.
And what is the feedback from the teachers? I mean, we tend to look at the infrastructure, which is very much important, but teachers would have issues from the former term and heading into the new term. What is the general consensus? Teachers are satisfied. I know the negotiations that came anyway earlier on in the year and even late last year. But what is the feedback generally amongst the teachers based on the information that would have been provided to tutor?
Well, teachers in the main, because of how education have been treated over the years, have been finding coping mechanisms, because we cannot leave our education system to fall flat. So our teachers have been standing in the gap. That strain, I don't know how long it would suffice in that teachers have been doing a lot to fill the gap. When you look at basic things as photocopying machines and printers that school don't have, and teachers are spending a lot of money buying their own printers, printing their own documents at home and so on, because it's quite inconvenient to be lined up at the division to have things printed by school. There are several other basic resources that schools don't have, but teachers in the main have been trying their very best to do what the resources that they have. We know the level of literacy and numeracy on the island, where you have some students excelling and some that are not excelling and not performing at an acceptable standard at all. And resources are needed to teach those persons who have differentiated learning techniques and so on that we would need to meet. If you don't get those resources, our teachers are creative in that regard to meet those teachers. So I'm not saying that the division is working on this overall vision where things are aligning. There are a lot of different things that the division would embark on, but I'm not saying that it's working towards any set goal or any set vision. So yes, our teachers, the moral is not as high as we want it to be, but we cannot give up. So we always encourage our teachers, let tutors do that fighting, and please, as best as you can, focus on giving your best to the students.
But are schools adequately staffed in preparation for September in terms of teachers?
We had staffing issues last year. I believe it would be the same this year, and it's not necessarily the fault of the division. We have a teaching service commission that functions out of Trinidad, where documents are sent down for appointments to be made. It's not that the division send teachers into the school without the appointments coming from the commission. The commission is very tardy in their functioning. We have various things at the desk of the commission that take certain years to come back. The division has to ask for permission from the commission to advertise. They wait on the commission to do the interviews. They wait on the commission to have appointments done. So it's a very tardy process having that connection with commission in Trinidad, waiting for them to deal with the legal matter. So it's not necessarily the division why we will not have the adequate number of teachers in all our schools, but it's that joint relationship with the commission as well.
All right, so I want to look at the primary school system first, Mr. Roberts. I think in July or so, following the results, you were quoted, well, I'm paraphrasing, where you were speaking to a particular media house and you basically were saying that as much as we are seeing progress and standout performances, there's a large percentage of students or schools declining in terms of their results. You want to elaborate?
And it's the same thing for the CXC results, the O levels, CSEC, and well, Cape is performing at the level that we need to perform at, where you are seeing 90-something% of the students excelling. The challenge with human beings, a disciplined mind can learn almost anything. The level of indiscipline among our children is preventing the majority of our children from doing well. So I'm not seeing where we are working towards meeting those needs of discipline in our schools. When we hear discipline, we hear punishment. So it's either we beating persons or we expelling persons. But there's a positive aspect of discipline where we put systems in place to groom the minds of our young persons so that they are more in tune to learning. They are more in tune to the positive aspects of schooling. So when we focus only on those children who do well, to give the feeling that all is well with our education system, students are in the top 100, or we have a number of persons getting distinctions at CXC. What about the mass majority who are not doing well and they are coming out into our society with a very low level of qualifications to attain any job? The ability to have any meaningful contribution to our society is limited. What about that? So I don't want persons to feel that because we have some students excelling, that all is well in education. We are seeing this spill off with crime. We will not get a handle on crime if we are continuing to produce persons who are like-minded to those negative aspects of living.
Mr. Roberts, I'm looking at a release here from the Ministry of Education, which was issued yesterday, and they spoke about the Ministry of Education advises that disbursements for the school supplies and book grant are being issued on a phased basis, and is saying that the public is reminded that priority considerations for the school supplies and book grant will be given to applicants in the following categories: individuals receiving public assistance, unemployed persons, persons with disabilities, and low-income household. Your response to this, because I mean, I understand that a number of schools are also lacking resources, but we can't speak resources without speaking reading material. What is TTUTA's response, or I guess you as the Tobago officer, in relation to this particular release?
Well, we would be welcoming all efforts to assist families. When we speak about discipline among our students, it's not just about the school's responsibility, but our families as well. And one aspect of discipline is ensuring that these students have the resources that they need so that they can be attentive to their schoolwork. Children who are deprived are in the main not doing as well as we want them to do. So all efforts of the ministry, the division, and state area representatives also having book drives. I know that Leslie also had her book drive and a back to school drive as well. All aspects of society who are contributing to our young persons. I would say in capacity of Tobago officer, I have also distributed book grants and so on to some of the schools that would have been affiliated with a teacher of the school or graduated from the school. We give back to some of those schools so that they can give to the parents to assist in the expense, because back to school for a parent to achieve children can be very expensive. So we are trusting that the assistance go to those who are really in need. We know how grants go. Sometimes persons who are not so much in that need in the main get some of those grants. So we trust that when the parents get those grants, they will do it justice in ensuring that the students make good use of what the government is giving. Because the economy is tough at the moment. So for the government to put aside funds to assist families, we would really want them to put it to good use.
And in terms of imbalance, are we still seeing in the Tobago space a major difference in certain schools? I mean, we can look at the results, but in terms of just resources, or even the level of teaching, are we still seeing a major imbalance when we look at the Tobago landscape and the schools? You tell us.
Right, so there will always be that imbalance. Remember, the division is not taking up their financial responsibility as they ought to. So schools who have a functioning PTA who is very supportive, schools that have the alumni that is very supportive, schools who are able to do those fundraising projects that bring a good bit of funds to help run the school would do better than the schools who don't have their PTA as functional, the alumni who are not so attached to the school where they are giving back to the school. So there will always be that disparity. Some schools you would see all teachers having laptops purchased by the school, and so some schools are not able to afford that. Some schools are buying their own photocopiers. They are able to resource the teachers. Some schools cannot afford that. So that's why we have been hoping that we have a partnership with the corporate world. I know the division had a corporate meeting at some time at the Magdalena, but the way in which that was structured, I have not seen any fruits coming out of it. So there will always be the disparity if there isn't the general covering for each school, the financial assistance, the additional resources, and so on.
The Minister of Education is quoted as saying, every child can succeed when given the right support, opportunities, and belief in their potential. The achievements we celebrate today, and this is in relation to the announcement of the CXC results and CAPE results. The achievement we achieve today demonstrate what is possible when we nurture the talents of all our students. I know commendation was given to English as opposed to mathematics. And I know if we look at the Tobago context, we could speak to the curriculum change that we were hearing about. I'm not too sure what is the latest, but in your view, how can we tackle specific subject areas to cater for what particular field our students can venture in this uniqueness of Tobago?
Right. So I will just highlight this thing again. You see, mathematics requires consistency. So for someone who would have done well in CXC mathematics, 5 years, 6 years after doing CXC mathematics, if you have not practiced it, you will have a challenge doing a math paper. So maths requires consistency. So those students who are not disciplined in their classroom activities and they are attending classes on a daily basis, they would have a challenge with mathematics. So that's why we have been focusing on the aspect of discipline, which to me, I've seen the government go in the direction of going to some public schools. I really don't know that that's a positive way of dealing with discipline. However, in terms of the Tobago-centric thing that I believe you were trying to bring back to the fore, we have not heard anything more than there was a committee that was doing some review or exploring options. But we need to get serious with it. We need to have our curriculum more meaningful to the students so that they can see how it applies to their real world and real life experiences. Our content, if not made meaningful, would not interest or intrigue our students where they are studying things that doesn't apply to them or they don't see how it applies to them. So we need to really have that reform in our education curriculum delivery. It does not mean that we change the whole core content and principles, but the thematic approach where we could infuse tourism in it, we could infuse agriculture in it so that students could see how it applies to their everyday living. We have been speaking about this for several years. We have good political statements on it, like both former minister and the current secretary. We're not seeing the action. We're not seeing the action to really capture our students in our schools.
And when we talk about action, we could also look at what actions are being taken to treat with, even beyond the academics, students' well-being. I know we are going further away from that pandemic period, but are students still struggling post-pandemic in terms of their mental health and dealing with the struggles of because let's face the reality, that period would have affected a number of persons in terms of the way both teachers and students, the way how you teach and learn. Are we still seeing effects from the pandemic, and take the opportunity to speak to some of the measures that you recommend, or even TTUTA is contributing towards assisting students' well-being even beyond academics?
All right, so I would not so much blame the pandemic, it's more, but the pandemic brought out a higher dependency on social media. But social media is what is really creating a divide between our young persons and our adults. So many of our adults have our students or children behave, we give them a device. So they are more focused on device while our adults do other things. So the communication between our young persons and adults. There are some parents or maybe some teachers who children believe they cannot have a conversation with. They more will get instructions, but they don't have that listening ear from adults, or they believe they don't have that listening ear. So a child should not be to that state where they're thinking about taking their own life. But if they feel trapped, if they feel like they don't have an ear, so it's not so much a device or any major mechanism to treat the well-being of our students, so they need to be heard. So sometimes as adults, I'm not blaming teachers or blaming parents only, but collectively, sometimes we are not giving our children that listening ear. We're not giving our children that opportunity to speak out, especially the ones who are not doing well at school. They don't have that opportunity to interact with the adults at a higher level, because we would usually pick those who are doing well to go to tourism competitions where we could have them express themselves in particular ways. So I believe we need to get back to the old school where we have genuine, open conversations. We encourage our children to speak so we can know what is happening with them. We cannot create a fix when we don't know what is the child individual need. And I believe we need to get back to genuine conversations, creating avenues for our children to speak out so we can know what is wrong. You can't fix when you don't know what is wrong. So I
I,
believe our children are not getting that that they need.
I saw recently the TTPS, I think in collaboration with the ministry, were considering, or at least speaking to, having officers positioned or stationed at schools, at particular schools. And as we're talking about outside of the academics, a number of students will be struggling with issues so much that they become not just victims of bullying, but the bullies. And if we look deeper into why certain students would behave a particular type of way, it's smack into the conversation about treating with, not allowing your young student or your young child to speak out and express themselves. And there are several other factors. But since that announcement, is that something that you think would work? Having police officers stationed at the schools. I know there's a partnership where a particular station would be in collaboration or would work in collaboration with a particular school. But having the officers stationed in the school is a different scene, you know?
No, I am not certain if we have been monitoring some of the social media things. I don't think our students are fearful of police officers neither. So having police presence as more of an authority would help, but it's not the fix. We need to have our children more positively minded so that we are not going down that road. When they reach to that level where they no longer have that fear, you would soon see a lot of incidents with police officers. We may chastise police officers for the use of force on our children. We need to put systems in place and not police officers, because our laws in this country are geared towards children. So adults who may be seeking to correct a child and so on, if not perfectly done, could land themselves into problems. We would have seen what happened at Mason Law Secondary a few years back, where a security officer intervened in a fight and after getting some blows from the student, sought to subdue the child and a lot of persons ridiculed the officer. The officer had reports to write and had to justify the use of force. So it's not just throwing police officers into schools to fix something, it may help curb in some areas and so on where students may be hesitant with the police officer's presence right there, but it's not the case at all. I think our guidance officers, our school counselors, even the curriculum officers and working with teachers and working with students and grooming the mind to be more positive is a more long lasting, sustainable addressing of school and discipline than to have the fanfare of saying we're having police officers in schools. I believe it's more of a political move to show some tangible thing that you're doing, but it's not really at the core of what our schools really need.
Wow, are we still? I mean, you mentioned guidance counselors, but do all schools? What is the recruitment protocol in terms of these guidance officers, or should I say, are all schools equipped with guidance counselors? Does that come through the ministry? Does that come through the division? How are guidance counselors recruited, and is it part of, are they part of all schools? That's particularly in the Tobago context.
Yes, so they are part of all schools, but it's not a guidance officer to a school. A guidance officer may have 5 or 6 schools. And if you have 10 or 15 students in a school that you really need to have one-on-one conversations with, that's not practical. So some schools, they will have a visit once a week. They may have a visit once every 2 weeks. What kind of long lasting interaction you would have with that child who is really having a challenge when you have a 1 hour session with that child, if you are able to have a whole hour? So the resources, and that's why I don't understand how we are treating education. Education needs to get the resources to bring the society back in check, where our economy can eventually be in check. But we are saying we don't have money to deal with education, and we have these things that are left under resourced. So the impact of our guidance officers and our counselors and so on is not as impactful as we want it to be because they are not dealing with 5 or 6 children. They are dealing with 5 or 6 schools. So the resource does not make it as effective as we want it to.
Mr. Roberts, so I mean, we continue to speak about resources, and resources seems to be the main point that covers all the aspects of school and the education system, particularly in this conversation this morning. What is TTUTA's key strategy, or what does TTUTA recommend in terms of priority heading into the new school term? Because we spoke about infrastructure, we spoke about the teachers, the students, their well-being, even looking at the mental situation as well. What do you believe because if the division is speaking about lack of whether it be finances or the resources to even deploy or disburse, what should be prioritized in the near future? I mean, it's just about 2 weeks till school open, right?
Yeah. Right. So what we have been advocating for nationally, both at the ministry and the division, is that we see education in a different light where it's the key aspect of development for Trinidad and Tobago. If we don't have an educated population, our country will not move forward. So what our government has done over the years is look at the expense of education, but they have not quantified the expense of uneducated people. So the money they're spending in crime and all the other grants because there are other persons who are in poverty and so on. If we quantify that, it outweighs the amount of money if we need to put into education to bring it to the standard that we need. So in terms of priority items, the infrastructure is not something that we could overlook. We need to have our infrastructure at that level where persons feel that they are in a school, they're in an institution where they are there to learn. The outlook of some of those schools, you don't feel welcome when you go to the school. Some of these schools really need a facelift. The safety of those schools would be top priority because I'm unsafe school for our teachers and unsafe school for our students as well. So we want our schools at a level where our teachers and our students can focus on learning and not skipping over issues within the schools and maybe have disruptions because school have to be dismissed through lack of water and those things. Um, we would always advocate for our teachers who are uplifting the education system and not being resourced with the money that they would have worked for. So we have outstanding intervention, outstanding gratuity. There are so many things that we are navigating through that our teachers should not be having to struggle with. So in terms of priority, we need to have our schools up and running. We need to have the educators who are at our schools to teach our students, given what they have worked. It's not that we are asking for additions. Give them what they have worked for and ensure that the basic functional aspects of the school, the devices, in terms of photocopiers, printers, and so on, we would be able to work in an advanced way to uplift what Tobago students.
All right, Mr. Roberts, I mean, and we hear you loud and clear, of course, Bradon Roberts there, the Tobago officer representing TTUTA. Before we close this morning, though, you know we need to talk about Scarborough Sec. What is happening? What is the latest? I mean, and we would hear from the secretary, we would see the releases, we would hear from the association as well. But what is really the latest with regards to the Scarborough Sec situation?
Well, I like that you asked that question. Now, Scarborough Sec has been a political football for several years. The THA, as far as I am aware, has not done what they have what they were supposed to do throughout the period. There was the smoke screen of blaming central government for not sending money. How much money does central government need to send? They have not done any drawings, as far as I'm aware. What they would have done is a turning and say that these were they going to do the school. I am not aware of any soil testing that was done to ensure that the area that they have earmarked for the new school, they have done that soil testing and it's fit for the project. All we have heard is that the central government have not sent the money. Now there's a different government in central government, and we are not hearing much information as to what is happening. All we hear is that the central government is interested in moving the project forward, but it has, as I understand, had key aspects to do, which are outstanding for several years. So even dating back to, I believe, George Jack in his time as finance secretary spoke about a 200,000 to start works regarding the new school. We have gone past that and we are still on political submission, especially when it's time for election season and talking about this thing. But I'm not seeing where we are having a new school in the next 5, 6, 7, 10 years if this is the attitude of our government.
Wow, very interesting. I mean, because you started by saying it's a political football, but I guess the students and the teachers are there, and even the new students are experiencing the situation that seems to not be coming to a closure. And I think we deserve, as particularly the students and the parents currently in the system, deserve some sort of clear piece of information to know what they're working with. And if I look at the budget though, I know we didn't, I'm not sure if we had you on set to comment on the budget presentation, but education was specifically speaking to digital technologies, and we hear about the smart classrooms and stuff, but we still have situations like this where just in relocation of a school is still not settled. Before we close, let's look at I guess, the intention to enhance the general school system with new technologies.
All right. So this was a promise made in year one of this administration, and we are at year four, still as a political promise. Um, Budgets before the national budget are just academic. It gives an idea as to the ratio, I guess, of how you would like to spend money. But only when the national budget comes out and you know what Tobago is actually going to get, that's when budgeting really starts. So creating these figures and speaking nicely about all these fancy things that would sound good to the public ear. When you really get the money that you have, that you're going to be getting, that's when you start the work of budgeting. That's when you need to really come to the public and see how you're going to deal with these particular things. And then we can move from that. We are always getting these fancy things, and the money that is given to the THE does not afford those things. We have this contractual situation that we are not able to deal with. We have many other aspects of education that we are not able to move forward because we have these budgets that don't align with reality. So when central government send what they send, we have to retract and do other things. And at that time, the public is not made aware of what the restructuring is going to be.
Mr. Roberts, so much to talk about, and I mean, I guess just to add to that last comment there, I think even in the presentation, as much as you're saying that is academic, and we know that it would be sent to central government, and let's hope that the technocrats within the division would have that conversation with central government prior to the national budget presentation. But I know based on the presentation made by Ms. Bradon Roberts, the secretary, she also made mention to the investment in human capital. And when we talk human capital, just going back to our initial part of the conversation, the teachers, for example, cannot be overlooked. And just equipping the teachers with the necessary resources to help with making our education system a better place. Just before we close, your final comments in terms of how best our teachers can be properly equipped to deal with the new term and beyond, Mr. Roberts.
All right. So first of all, as I close, just want to give the encouragement to our teachers and all those involved in the education system. There will be challenges, and we're going to continue to fight towards addressing those challenges. What we want from all stakeholders, not just the teachers, but parents as well, that vigilance where we are giving a focus to our students to ensure that they can do the best that they can. In terms of the teacher moral, tutor is always going to be that entity that will work towards the benefit of our teachers. We are always going to call on the education secretary. It's never personal, as I would indicate whenever we meet from time to time, but they have to do better. So we would always call on the division to do better. This submission of no money all the time cannot work. It is not going to be acceptable. Um, they have responded to me whenever I say they need to be transparent, that they have been transparent and they report to the people. But I cannot recall any aspect of transparency from the THE that says we need 100,000 for this, we only have 20,000. We need a million for this, we only have 500,000. We hear large budgets, but we don't get the breakdown of where the shortfall is and where we need to advocate. Because Tobago should be advocating for greater funds from the teaching, not only from the few politicians. The larger body as to be unions. We should not be sitting back and accepting whatever Trinidad gives us. But we need the transparency that Tobago fully understands where the shortfall coming from, which projects are lacking because of the shortfall. So Tobagonians as a collective could really address the matter. We are seeing Tobago getting money, and then all we hear is it's not enough. We don't know where the shortfall is really coming from. So that transparency will help. So teachers who are sacrificing could see that well, the teacher is really giving up their best. We're not seeing what the best is.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being with us this morning, Mr. Roberts, and I guess sharing your perspective as we head into the new school term. Were you satisfied with the extra week, by the way?
Well, anything to give the division enough time to be ready, I will be happy with. But I trust that they use the time wisely.
All right then, Mr. Roberts, thank you for being with us. Of course, the Tobago officer representing TTUTA there.